I'll be honest, this is my first cRPG. Just getting that out of the way now so that my perspective is clear to those who came to check this video out. Now, cRPGs are the 80s synthwave of 90s PC gaming. Basically one of the old darlings that managed to come back to a rather niche PC gaming audience. Considering the genre has been experiencing a great revival, it's an opportunity for people to break into it for the first time. Hell, the wave of great bangers like Divinity Original Sin, Pillars of Eternity, or Baldur's Gate 3 being the raging sexual Tyrannosaurus in the room that's caught many people's attention. With this slew of games that seem to be on par with the second coming of Christ, many people wonder where to start. Do we go with the hottest things now, or start off with the classics, even though they can be as archaic and obtuse as the mystical sect of Jewish Kabbalah, Evangelion fans aside? If you're looking for a great place to start, honestly, Tyranny is one of the best games to get you acquainted with the fundamentals. Wait, what the hell is Tyranny? Oh boy, you're in for something now, friendo. Tyranny was made by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Paradox Interactive. It is one of those games swept under the rug and has become the generally forgotten stepchild within the recently released market of cRPGs. Just after Pillar of Eternity's explosion onto the scene, Obsidian Entertainment was on the celebratory coke high, and got into the cash and hooker short bus with Paradox Interactive for a year-long bender. Then Tyranny was eventually released. Unfortunately, it was kinda dead on arrival. I mean, it sold okay and got favorable reviews, but I think Paradox's vice president said it best. Everyone was hoping that it would do better. An experimentation following the success of Pillars of Eternity, it had something going for it. The crew delivering a much shorter cRPG experience for something more deliberate. I could already hear many RPG fans mewling at the monitor at the sound of a short RPG. Fair dues, I guess. But Obsidian exchanged time for choices and dialogue in a pretty interesting setting and concept. Looking into my crystal ball after going through a hazy 70s drug binge, I'm pretty sure I'm going to recommend this game. But honestly, is this game worth playing and something for people new to the genre to check out? Well, shit, let's get into it. Hearing that Tyranny had an interesting setting that strayed from the repetitive "you're the good guy" plotline, it already caught my attention. A scenario where evil has already won and you're just a militarized clerk a la Judge Dredd for the big overlord and sent to clear up remnants of rebellion. It legitimately had me hooked. The setting offers an interesting insight into different types of evil and a darker theme and tone that the game actually does well in exploring. Add to the fact that it wasn't a cRPG with thousands of hours of content, generally being much shorter and digestible for someone who never really played an isometric RPG all the way through, or successfully, mind you. It seemed perfect as I don't have as much time to dedicate to RPGs anymore. Yet, to counterbalance the much lowered playtime for the more hardcore audience, there's a larger emphasis on choices actually mattering, and making the player give a shit about a good many things. How every choice they make could be a great boon or fuck them over. This can manifest through the people you helped or crossed, the factions you made feel all snuggy-wuggy with hugs, or have you squarely on their shit list, or perhaps even indifferent to your presence. Yet the multitude of ways things can help you or expel divine wrath ready to smite your ass isn't just related to people. Your general reputation and Forrest Gump hijinks unearthing ways for even environments, finding ways to punch you in the nuts or give you ice cream based on your past choices. Even before playing the goddamn game too. Tyranny is so adamant in having choices and consequences that it makes you fill out a good 10 to 20 minute dating profile known as the military campaign at the very start. Remember, you're the agent/militarized clerk of the Overlord, and that means you're going to be a war advisor for conquest and deeply involved in the subjugation of the territory in this fictional continent. Because of that, you're going to be deeply involved in how the two armies sent out to deal with the problem are managed. This ranges from logistics to legitimate battle. Your actions come up often in conversation, even at the get-go with the first NPC, and can even give the player famous titles or infamous nicknames when meeting with the different factions. Reputation and choices going the second mile to affect direct gameplay through both the factions and the crew that you roll with. Everything you say will have consequences, meaning the player can gain favor or wrath from people and factions with each dialogue choice. It even records every choice and positive or negative dialogue exchange. that is then etched into the journal and faction notes like the 10 Commandments. Think similar to Telltale's X will remember that. And they usually do deliver in some way. This can also determine if party members will stick with you or leave. However, as the sociopath I am, you can also take the Machiavellian route where my party members feared me to the point where they were too afraid to leave or run away. This mechanic actually having repercussions, as party members can be tempted by others to turn on you later in the game. Their disposition towards you even unlocking new skills and abilities you can use in combat. This not only happens through direct dialogue or adjacent conversations that party members are around to witness, but also through missives. These being pigeon-mailed text messages to other background characters that can bring insight into different lore elements. This is a game immersed in the setting of war, and Bismarckian cutthroat politics where you're gonna have to be smart with who you keep as your friends, and who you choose to be your enemies. Character creation is a cRPG standard with in-depth stats and specializations for both exploration and combat. Yet the game mixes it up by allowing a more generalist playstyle. You're not locked into a specific class and can change your weapons and dispositions as you wish, starting off with 2 fighting styles you can switch between. Want to be a combat mage that can chuck spears and shield bash their enemies to oblivion, being well versed in magic to the point you can keep yourself alive and even go through the entire game solo without a party? It can be done, you edgy lone wolf. So now you have no reason to be that guy at your D&D table. Even so, all your skills and your background can be used to affect dialogue conversations and things you spot in the overworld. But now that I've gone over story and unique mechanics, how's the actual gameplay? I will admit, my outsider nature to the genre probably affected my interest, but it wasn't riveting. Real time with pause generally being somewhat iffy and downright annoying at times. It's meant to be a way to speed up combat and let combat be more dynamic without things can change quickly. I can see how they were going for this, and I get it and applaud them, but it just wasn't for me. I'd rather take turn-based or more involved action combat, but considering how real-time with pause is a major part of the subgenre, you just have to get used to it. Considering the genre has its roots in Dungeons & Dragons, party formations, sneaking to avoid traps or even use them to your advantage, and utilizing the environment to use choke points and cover to increase your chances of winning does make it more enjoyable, but generally it grew tedious. I started this game on normal difficulty, and once I got a grasp of basic cRPG fundamentals and learning how to play tactically, I went through the game at a good pace and had no issues. However, I eventually started the game over again and changed the difficulty to story mode because I just wanted to get through combat faster. The game utilized combat as a means for padding instead of appropriate context. This was so aggravating that I eventually just automated the AI into useful archetypes and placed them into an optimal party formation to get through the fighting faster. The first and third act being generally enjoyable, but the long second act being such a slog that for my absolute first playthrough, I took a month-long break from the game after I got through the second act because of how fucking boring it was to get through it. I even installed it for some time because I was tired of going through the combat, but luckily the game offers a way to speed up by going into fast mode, so plus points for that, I guess. Generally, I'm a story-focused player for role-playing games, but I have no issue or dislike for combat. Heck, I get a thrill every time I get into combat in D&D, Fallout, Final Fantasy, Mass Effect, Persona, and etc. Hell, even some of my favorite games of all time I play just for the combat alone and ignore everything else. But except for the tactical positioning and play, I found no joy in the combat and just wanted to rush through it to get back to exploring the world and doing side quests, or the main story. Yet combat and side quests have little to entice you with. Side quests generally being fetch quests and tied to the dungeons in some way that are integral to the story mode. And fuck, don't even get me started on the dungeon/spires in the game. Whitelight, who's another YouTube reviewer and essayist who you should totally check out, has some remarks that coincide with my general philosophy on dungeon design. Dungeons ought to be a mix of combat, narrative, and puzzles to be fun. Fun generally being derived from using your intelligence to interact with every component within a system to reach a positive outcome. The dungeons have none of that. Dungeons simply act as one huge puzzle collection that relies on pilfering every chest or dead body to find a MacGuffin that lets you go forward. Or, if that isn't your cup of tea, you can bash your head against a trial and error puzzle to progress, where every mistake is punished by being swarmed with enemies. Pair that with my personal feelings on the tedious nature of combat, these were the most hated parts of the game for me. Heck, after I returned from a dungeon with the necessities needed to progress with the story, I realized I had only found one item out of 2 for a side quest that required me to go back in. I was so jaded and sick of the idea of going back that I just left it unfinished. Putting that aside, however, the mechanics, story, world, and dialogue kept me going, and eventually I was satisfied and thought it was worth it to go through the experience. I clocked around 12 hours to get through the game, even when large sections of the game were played in fast mode. And bear in mind, I was playing on story mode, which made the combat much faster to go through. Combat really is a major time sink and part of the game. The game's playtime could easily be doubled on normal or harder difficulties if you personally find the combat more riveting than I did and chose to explore the timed side quest. Oh shit, yeah, I forgot the game takes time seriously in a Majora's Mask kind of way, but mostly had a more pressing effect in the first act of the game. Many other reviews put forth the perspective that the ending was rather abrupt, but this can vary on your choices too. Personally, I was rather satisfied with my choices and everything seemed to take a logical step based on how I chose to conduct my character in the world. So there's no real complaints for me, but I should get that out there. Honestly, this game presents itself well with its characters and voice acting, while it could use more variety in the music department, even though it is still memorable. It generally had only one small bug and a bigger one that could be problematic but was still avoidable. One being a text error message and the other being a softlock trigger that occurred when speaking to a specific person when our conversation somehow bugged and looped around, but it could be avoided and didn't stop the game. You can pick it up on Steam or GOG for a cheap and fair price, and I would recommend it for people trying out cRPGs for the first time. It'll teach you basic fundamentals that can make you literate in other cRPGs, and its relatively short length means that it can be a taster for those wanting to get into the genre and see if it's to your liking. Even so, it was fun when all my choices not only affected me in both the long and short term. It was a generally exhilarating time going through a Chrono Trigger-like scenario where I had to defend my actions, but I won't get too deep into it for spoiler territory. Regardless, I'm KnunPlus, and thanks for checking out my first review on this channel. I'll probably be looking for something else to play and wouldn't mind a few recommendations. Yet I won't be playing any RPGs anytime soon and try to cleanse the palate before diving into another one. Be seeing you all next time, and now I can go back to feeding my tendency to accidentally ship characters who turned out to be related. Yeah, that's for those who played and know exactly what I'm talking about.